Normally on Boot Wizard, we like to get hype about new boots. We like to get excited. We like to show them off. We like to shout and scream about all the great tech that comes through. And sometimes brands mess it up so badly that they either drop an absolute stinker of a boot or they do something that's so terrible it taints their brand name and their brand image for years to come. And today, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the 10 worst mistakes that brands have ever made with their football boots. This is part 1. Get subscribed so you can pick up part 2. Of course, remember to like the video, and you can support us if you would like to head over to patreon.com/bootwizard, or alternatively head to soccersupplement.com for the rest of the month. They're supporting the channel by giving you 20% off if you buy anything using the code UPMyGame5. Let's get on with it. What is at number 10? Before we get started, I do have some honourable mentions, starting with Adidas's consistent ability to annoy the Pred head community, starting with the Predator X, which nobody liked, the Predator LZ, which took away leather, which nobody liked, and the Predator 18.1, which the Pred head community went, what is this? This is not a Predator. Honourable mention also goes to the Future 19.1 for killing all of the Future's momentum up to that point, the Copa SL for taking away one of the defining features of the Copa by ditching the leather and moving to synthetic, something nobody asked for, the Wave Igniters 3 for doing exactly the same thing, and the most recent example, the New Balance Tequila V3, which has completely derailed the New Balance Tequila line by simply being terrible. Into the list proper at number 10, we have Adidas with the release of the Tune-It. Now, the Tune-It system isn't inherently a bad idea, a modular football boot that allows you to switch one boot between SG and FG and be able to switch out different uppers to give you a different look. The idea isn't actually awful. The execution of this idea was absolutely shocking. Over tighten your studs, you end up cracking your sole plate. Don't tighten them enough, you leave studs all over the place, and to add to that, they were incredibly uncomfortable, very plasticky, and weighed about 2 tons. Overall, a great idea that didn't really take off, and it wasn't surprising to see this both killed off and also in all the Adidas outlets wherever you went. Nike had a good thing going with the Obra and Opus lines. Some people wanted the dynamic fit collar, flashy Magista Obra, others went for the Kanga-like Magista Opus in order to try and compensate for the loss of the CTR. So when new generations of both boots were released, expectations were fairly high. The Obra came out and wasn't a bad upgrade, if you can call it an upgrade, but it certainly wasn't anything tragic. The Opus, on the other hand, was a shocker. This boot, especially in that heat map upper, just looked like a teenager that had broken out into a fit of acne just on prom night, quite at the wrong time. It also didn't feel that great on the ball and just generally wasn't very well received. It was so poorly received in actual fact that Nike had to go and adjust it halfway through its life. Gone was the pimple-popping Opus 1, and in came a boot that was much more reminiscent of the upper that you got on the Magista Obra, but still made out of Kanga-like. A far, far better boot, and one that I personally really enjoy. The Opus 2.1, a massive error, so bad that Nike had to fix it. At 8, we're back with Nike again, thankfully with an issue that they managed to solve before it got too bad. We're talking about the Superfly 1 to start with, a boot where the initial launch colorway was pulled because when the boot was on the feet of pros, it was actually exploding. The upper material just couldn't stand up to the demands of modern day football, and the upper was seen to be ripping on the feet of its high profile pros who were wearing it on the pitch. Nike delayed the launch, allowing them to remedy this problem before the boot was actually released. However, that combined with the price tag definitely wasn't the best look for Nike when they were launching a brand new boot. We've also got to throw the Superfly 2 and 3 into the mix here because honestly, they're just terrible boots. An entire redesign of the Superfly name with the Superfly 4 and the thankful introduction of Flyknit was what was needed to save the Superfly from just being another expensive flop. The Superfly is now synonymous with the high quality mercurial name, but it was almost dead in the water before it even started. At number 7, we're back to Adidas and we're back to their modular systems, the Adidas Glitch. The Glitch was a decent idea, another modular system where you could swap out the uppers and the sole plates to give you FG, SG, and even cage style boots, all from one upper, or just switch out the look of your boot by changing up that upper component. However, it was released with a fairly confusing invitation-only app system in limited countries with dodgy sizing and just far too many skins, the uppers, released over time. The boot wasn't good enough to hold up to all of these extra loops you had to jump through in order to get them, and in the end, outside of a small dedicated community, can definitely be considered a failure. The kind of boot you should absolutely try once, but I'm probably not going to play a whole season in them. You know that a release is bad when many years after it drops, a brand is still being ridiculed for it, to the point where it's possibly the most defining characteristic of that brand's football boots. As Under Armour set out to launch a brand new version of their long-running Spotlight line, they did so with a zipper. I'm sure you've all seen this by now. It's essentially a comedy boot. Why would you put a zipper down the middle of the boot, which provides both a hard area and a failure to be able to adjust the boot properly? This is another instance, much like the Opus, where the brand had to step in and remedy it by getting rid of the zipper and putting a standard lacing system on the boot, which, shock, surprise, surprise, the boot was actually fairly good once they got rid of that terrible zipper. If you want to buy yourself a Spotlight and you don't want to end up with a massive pressure point on the top of your foot or looking completely ridiculous, ditch the zipper, buy the laces. Number 5 is a boot that's so bad that it became a running joke in a group chat that I'm in, that if people were to offend me, I would use my wizard powers in order to turn all of their boots into a New Balance Vivaro 2. Now, this list isn't just about terrible boots. This is about boots that have had major impacts on brands and have been major mistakes. The reason that this is a major mistake is because not only was the Vivaro 1 an excellent boot, the Vivaro 2 was so bad that it tainted the New Balance name for quite some time. The Vivaro name was absolutely ruined after this came out. There was just barely any redeeming features to this boot, and the long-term harm that that caused to a company is massive. This one hits a little bit close to home as well, because the original Vivaro 1 is genuinely one of my favorite boots that I think I've ever worn. The Vivaro 2, possibly my least favorite ever. It's just shocking. Not even in a comedy you should try it out kind of way, in a way of burn it, burn them all. That is part 1 of my top 10 biggest mistakes ever made by brands with their football boots. Do get subscribed to pick up part number 2. Remember to hit the notifications so you know exactly when that goes live. Remember to like the video, and if you can support the channel, head to patreon.com/bootwizard. Remember, for the rest of the month, we are being supported by Soccer Supplement. So if you do want to pick anything up, then please head over to Soccer Supplement and use the code UPMyGame5 to get yourself 20% off and help support us. But that's all from Boot Wizard here today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Have a good one, and we'll see you soon.